Okay, so now that we've finalized our character asset and we've also got our set compositing asset built, let's go ahead and start our work on shot 2. So to do that, we need to layer our character over the top of our set. Then we need to go ahead and tweak some of the values on those assets to try and get the lighting and the artistic feel as close to what we're after as possible. And then we're also going to have to do a little bit of animation on a couple of the lights, because if you recall, our main spotlights turn on after a few frames, so it wouldn't make sense to have our rim light and our fill light active before that point, because really they'd all be coming from the illumination from those lights. So let's go ahead and get these guys layered together. So I'm going to go and grab our set comp and bring that down by our character comp. And I'm going to create a new layer comp. And since we want to layer from background to foreground, our set is going to layer behind our character. So let's wire our set in, and then wire our character in. And if we bring our visibility down, we can see our character wired over the top of the set. And already that's not looking too bad at all. Now it is worth noting, while scrubbing the timeline, we're going to be eating up a large amount of memory.
Yeah, we can prove it to them real quick.
So let's hunt down HMaster. There we go. So HMaster is currently using 258. If we scrub, very quickly that's going to eat up a huge amount of memory. So I'm going to be frequently pushing Alt-Shift-R to clear up our compositing memory. So there's a few changes I'd like to make. I think the main spotlights are a little bit too intense, and when we get down here, I think the secondary spotlights are also a little bit too intense. So I'm going to hunt down our character compositing asset. I'm going to set our main spotlights. I'm just going to decrease these very slightly, somewhere around there. And let's grab our secondary spotlights, decrease their diffuse some. So decrease their diffuse. And I'm also going to decrease their specular down a fairly large amount. So something like that works quite nicely. Now obviously you guys are going to be able to go and tweak these values a lot more than we are, because really the purpose here is to educate you guys as to how to bring all of these different passes back together in compositing, and not so much to focus on producing a fantastic end result. So feel free to go in and tweak these values, spend a lot more time rendering out your sequences and checking the values over the entire animated sequences, and even going in and animating some of these values changing over time. And talking of animating these values changing over time, if we come back to the beginning of our animation, you notice our main spotlights are off, but it still looks as if our character is illuminated. So what we need to do is take our fill light, our bounce light, and the rim lights, and change their overall intensity, keying that off before our spots come on, and bringing that on with our spotlights. So I'm going to hunt down frame 223 is when the main spots come on. I recall that frame 221 was when they're completely off. So on frame 221, I'm going to grab our rim lights, set their overall intensity to 0, and Alt left click to key. I'm going to grab the fill light, and I'm going to actually jump forward to frame 223 and key that at the current value so that we don't lose that value. Then jump back to 221 and key that at 0. Let's do the same with our rim light as well. So let's jump forwards 2 frames and key its overall intensity at 1. So now between frame 221 and 223, our rim light and fill light are turning on. Now the rim light's actually turning on to frame 224. That 1 frame difference I'm not worried about. And also let's do our bounce light. So our bounce light on 223, I want to be keyed on its current intensity. And on 221, I want to key that down at 0. So now from frame 221 to 223, it is almost as if only our main spots have turned on, but really we're getting all of that secondary lighting also coming on, which makes more sense because our main spotlight's bouncing off the floor are creating the bounce light. We're effectively illuminating the face with a fill light, but that's technically supposedly coming from our main spots, and the rim light is really supposedly coming from those main spotlights, so we don't want those to be active if our main spotlights were not. So with that, we've wrapped up most of shot 2. All we need to do is go ahead and get our depth in place, but before we do that, we're going to take a sidetrack and take a look at color correction. So thanks a lot.